The rich man left her in the desert. Now she has an empire and he cries in regret. Rebecca Carter tasted the bitter flavor of betrayal as her tears dried quickly in the heat of the Mojave Desert. Her life of luxury had crumbled in a matter of hours, and now she was there, abandoned like a wounded animal. The roar of the imported car's engine faded into the dust of the dirt road, taking with it Brandon Mitchell, the man who had promised to love her forever. He had just discovered she had filed a motion to contest the fraudulent divorce he had forced, and his revenge was cruel and calculated. "You wanted to fight me in court. Now you're on your own," were the last words he shouted before speeding away. Rebecca looked around. The dry landscape stretched for miles, dotted only by saguaros and spiny cacti. Her beige linen dress, once impeccable, was now torn and dirty. The high-heeled shoes were useless on that rocky terrain. She took them off and began walking barefoot, each step hurting more than the last. The sun was high and merciless. Rebecca had never walked so much in her entire life. During 15 years of marriage, her world had been confined to the malls of Phoenix, exclusive clubs and international trips. Now sweat streamed down her face as she tried to find some sign of civilization. After 2 hours of walking, she saw a small brick structure on the horizon. It was a simple little house with red roof tiles and a yard fenced with barbed wire. A few chickens pecked at the hard-packed earth. Rebecca staggered closer, her throat dry as sandpaper. A woman with graying hair appeared in the doorway. Her sun-tanned face was marked by years of sun, but her eyes were kind. She wore a simple floral dress and flip-flops. "Good heavens, what happened to you?" asked the woman, rushing to meet Rebecca. "Please, water," Rebecca managed to whisper before collapsing on the dirt ground. When she woke up, Rebecca was lying in a hammock on the house's porch. The woman with graying hair was by her side, offering a glass of cool water. "Slowly, slowly. Drink it, little by little," she said in a motherly voice. "I'm Dorothy Carter. And you are?" "Rebecca," she replied hoarsely. "Rebecca Mitchell, Rebecca Carter." "Carter, too. You might even be family," said Dorothy with a welcoming smile. "Tell me what happened." Rebecca hesitated. How to explain her situation without sounding ridiculous? A rich woman abandoned in the desert by her own husband sounded like a bad movie plot. But Dorothy waited patiently, without pressure. "My husband, ex-husband, left me here. We were fighting and he—" Her voice broke. "Good-for-nothing man," Dorothy muttered. "What kind of creature abandons a woman in the middle of nowhere? Thank goodness you managed to get here." A middle-aged man appeared on the porch. He was tall, thin, with sun-leathered skin and calloused hands. He wore a faded plaid shirt and patched jeans. "Dorothy, who's our visitor?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "Mr. Harold, this is Rebecca. Her husband did a cruel thing, left her lost on the road." Harold shook his head in disapproval. "A man who does that isn't a man, he's a coward. Mrs. Rebecca, you can stay here as long as you need. Our house is simple, but there's room for one more plate at the table." Rebecca felt her eyes fill with tears again. The kindness of these strangers contrasted brutally with Brandon's coldness. "I have no way to pay," she began to say. "Who said anything about payment?" Dorothy interrupted. "Here in the desert, we help those in need. Life collects its dues in other ways." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following days, Rebecca began to get to know the small community where she had stopped better. There were 15 families who lived on subsistence farming and odd jobs in the nearest town, Wickenburg, which was 40 kilometers away. Life was hard, but the people were supportive. Dorothy lent simple clothes to Rebecca, floral cotton dresses and leather sandals. For the first time in years, Rebecca saw herself without elaborate makeup or designer clothes. Her reflection in the mirror startled her at first, but gradually she grew accustomed to the more natural version of herself. "Mrs. Rebecca was used to big city life, right?" asked Dorothy as they prepared breakfast. "I was. I lived in Phoenix in a gated community. I never had to worry about anything except parties and shopping." admitted Rebecca, feeling a tightness in her chest. And what did you do for work? I didn't work. My ex-husband always said his wife didn't need to work. That it would diminish his status. Rebecca paused, realizing how that sounded now. Before getting married, I was studying business administration in college. I even tutored math to help out at home. So you understand numbers and organization? I did. It's been so long. Dorothy smiled. You never really forget those things. It's like riding a bicycle. During breakfast, Rebecca met more neighbors. Mr. Walter, a 70-year-old man who raised goats. Mrs. Helen, who made cakes and sweets to sell at the town market. Daniel, a young man in his 20s who worked as a bricklayer. Each had their own story of struggle and perseverance. The problem here is we produce, but we don't know how to sell properly, commented Daniel. The middlemen pay peanuts for our products. How so? Asked Rebecca, her curiosity piqued. We grow beans, corn, cassava. The women make sweets, cookies, crafts. But when it comes to selling, only this merchant from Wickenburg shows up and pays whatever he wants. Rebecca was intrigued. During her business administration studies, she had learned about distribution chains and profit margins. Even without practical experience, she knew something was wrong with this story. Have you ever tried selling directly to the consumer? How? We don't have a car to take stuff to Phoenix. We don't know anyone there. An idea began to form in Rebecca's mind. She knew Phoenix well. She knew where the best restaurants, gourmet markets, and specialty shops were. Perhaps she could help in some way. Can I take a look at what you produce? Mr. Harold took her to see the community's crops. Rebecca was impressed with the quality of the produce. The corn was plump and a vibrant yellow. The beans had perfect coloring. The cassava was thick and healthy. Is all of this organic? She asked. Yes. We don't have money to buy pesticides, so we farm the old-fashioned way. Rebecca felt a twinge of excitement. Organic products were highly valued in Phoenix. Brandon himself paid exorbitant prices for natural foods at the gourmet market in the mall. Do you know what this is worth in the capital? No, we only know what Mr. Raymond pays. Rebecca asked to see the community's account books. What she found left her outraged. Mr. Raymond, the merchant in question, was paying less than 30% of the market value for the products. His profit was obscene. You're being robbed, she said bluntly. We know, Mrs. Rebecca, but what can we do? He's the only one who comes to pick up here. What if I could find other buyers? The looks turned to her, a mixture of hope and skepticism. Do you know anyone in Phoenix? Rebecca hesitated. She did, but she wasn't sure if anyone would take her seriously after the divorce scandal. Brandon had spread distorted versions of the facts to their social circles. I know a few places. I can try. The following week, Rebecca went to Wickenburg with Daniel, who had a motorcycle. The small town had a public telephone in the central square. Rebecca dialed the number for Natural Flavors, a fancy Phoenix restaurant she used to frequent with Brandon. Hello, I'd like to speak with Chef Marcus. Marcus is busy. Who may I say is calling? Rebecca Carter. Tell him it's about supplying special organic products. A few minutes later, Marcus answered. Rebecca? Rebecca Mitchell? I thought you had moved abroad. It's a long story, Marcus. I'm calling about a business opportunity. I have access to exceptionally high-quality organic products, straight from the producer. Interesting. I'm always looking for reliable suppliers. Where are the products from? Rural Arizona. Traditional family farming, no pesticides, preserved soil. Send samples. If the quality is good, we can talk about a partnership. Rebecca arranged to send some samples the following week. When she hung up, she felt a mix of anxiety and excitement she hadn't experienced in years. Daniel watched her curiously. Did it work, Mrs. Rebecca? It's just the beginning, Daniel. But I think it might work, yes. Back in the community, Rebecca organized a meeting with all the producers. She explained her proposal. If she could sell the products for fairer prices, everyone would share the extra profit proportionally. And if it doesn't work? Asked Mr. Walter. Then you keep selling to Mr. Raymond as you've always done. You have nothing to lose. People looked at each other. The proposal made sense. "What do you want in return?" Dorothy wanted to know. Rebecca thought for a moment. What did she really want? Since arriving there, for the first time in years, she felt useful, with a purpose. A place to live and food on the table. "I want to help you because you helped me when I needed it most." The answer seemed to convince the group. The next day, everyone mobilized to prepare the best samples. Rebecca coordinated the process, applying management knowledge she had forgotten she possessed. She organized simple spreadsheets to track each family's production. She created a basic quality system, ensuring only the best products were sent. For the first time in decades, Rebecca felt truly productive. The samples were sent to 3 restaurants and 2 gourmet markets in Phoenix. Rebecca used her old social connections, even at the risk of being rejected because of the rumors Brandon had spread. A week later, 2 establishments called interested. The Natural Flavors restaurant wanted to establish a monthly contract for supplying greens and grains. Green Market, a small but prestigious chain, offered a trial with organic beans and corn. The prices offered were 3 times higher than what Mr. Raymond paid. When Rebecca announced the result to the community, the reaction was total disbelief. 3 times more, repeated Mr. Harold, incredulous. 3 times more. And this is just the beginning. The first deliveries were made successfully. Daniel managed to borrow an old van to take the products to Phoenix. Rebecca accompanied him on the first trips, introducing the producers to the buyers. The reception was excellent. The chefs praised the exceptional quality of the products. Some customers at the gourmet markets began asking specifically for the products from the desert community. With the initial success, other opportunities began to appear. A nutritionist named Jennifer, who worked with athletes and high-income individuals, called interested in buying products for her clients. "I've heard about the exceptional quality of your organic products. My clients will pay any price for truly healthy food." The conversation with Jennifer revealed something interesting. She had studied with Brandon in university years ago. "Brandon Mitchell, that pretentious businessman?" she asked when Rebecca mentioned her ex-husband. "He was always arrogant, thought he could walk all over everyone." "You know him well?" "Well enough to know he's not trustworthy. In college, he copied other people's work and lied shamelessly. Some things never change." The conversation with Jennifer confirmed suspicions Rebecca had always harbored about Brandon's character. It also opened a new network of contacts interested in organic products. Meanwhile, news of the partnership's success began to spread through the region. Other rural communities sought out Rebecca to learn how to replicate the model. She realized she could expand the operation, creating a network of producers. That's when the problems began. Mr. Raymond, the local middleman, showed up in the community, furious. He had lost important suppliers, and his profits had plummeted. "Oh, you're making a huge mistake," he said to the gathered group. "This city woman will abandon you when she gets tired of playing games. I've always bought from you, even when the harvest was bad." Rebecca felt the tension in the air. Some residents began to feel insecure. "Mr. Raymond is right about one thing," said Rebecca, surprising everyone. "He has always been reliable, but reliable in paying little and keeping you dependent." She showed the spreadsheets she had prepared, comparing current earnings with the history of sales to Raymond. "In 2 months, you've earned more than in the entire last year. This isn't a game, it's serious business." Raymond left muttering vague threats about consequences and problems with inspections. A week later, health inspectors showed up in the community. They questioned permits, licenses, and certifications that had never been necessary before. Rebecca realized Brandon had discovered her location and begun a campaign of sabotage. The tactics were similar to those he used against business competitors. "How did they know where we are?" asked Daniel. "My ex-husband has money and influence. He must have hired someone to find me." Rebecca knew she needed to act quickly. She organized all the necessary documentation, instructed the producers on basic sanitary standards, and secured a lawyer in Wickenburg to regularize the situation. The process was bureaucratic and expensive, but Rebecca used her personal savings to cover the costs. They were the last resources she had managed to withdraw before Brandon blocked her accounts. During this period of pressure, she discovered something that changed everything. The region had springs of pure water hidden among the rocks of the nearby mountains. The water was crystalline and had natural minerals that gave it a special taste. A geologist who visited the area confirmed it was an aquifer naturally protected by rock layers. The water was of exceptional quality, comparable to the best mineral waters marketed in the country. "This is a treasure," said the specialist. "With proper management, you could have a sustainable source of income for decades." Rebecca saw an even greater opportunity. Mineral water was a valuable market, and the remote location of the source would ensure continued purity. She researched mineral water regulations and discovered the process, though complex, was feasible. The initial investment would be high, but the returns would be proportional. That's when she received an unexpected visit. Brandon appeared in the community on a Thursday afternoon, driving his white Lexus. He wore an impeccable suit that contrasted brutally with the rural setting. Rebecca saw him arrive from the porch of Dorothy's house. Her heart raced, but not from love. It was anxiety mixed with contained anger. "Rebecca!" he shouted, getting out of the car. "I need to talk to you." All the residents came out of their homes to watch the scene. Brandon seemed uncomfortable with so many curious eyes. "You can speak from right there," replied Rebecca, without leaving the porch. "It's private." "We have nothing private to discuss. You abandoned me here, remember?" Brandon looked around with poorly disguised contempt. "Rebecca, stop this foolishness. You've made your point. Now come back home and let's resolve our differences like adults. This is my home now." "Don't be ridiculous. You don't belong in this place." Rebecca felt the anger rising. How did he have the nerve to show up there and speak that way? "I belong where I am respected and valued. Here I am useful." "Useful?" Brandon laughed disdainfully. "You're playing businesswoman with some hicks. This is no life for you." Mr. Harold approached the porch. "With all due respect, sir, Mrs. Rebecca is an honorable person. She has helped us more in 3 months than anyone has in years." Brandon completely ignored him. "Rebecca, I'm offering you a chance to return with dignity. Sign the divorce papers and I'll forget all this rebellion. And if I refuse? You'll regret it. I have the power to make life difficult for you and for these people." The threat was clear to everyone. Rebecca felt the weight of responsibility. She had brought trouble to people who had only tried to help her. "Give me a week to think." Brandon smiled, thinking he had won. 1 week. After that, things get more complicated. He got in the car and drove off, raising a cloud of dust. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She walked around Dorothy's property, thinking about the options available. Returning to Brandon would mean security for the community, but it would be a betrayal of herself and everything she had built there. Staying meant accepting a war against a powerful and wealthy man. Rebecca knew how Brandon operated. He would use every resource available to destroy anything she tried to build. The next morning, she called a meeting with all the residents. "You heard the threats yesterday. My ex-husband isn't bluffing. He has money and connections to create serious problems." Silence fell over the group. "If you think it's better for me to leave, I'll understand," Rebecca continued. "Don't even think about it," said Dorothy, breaking the silence. "You've transformed our lives. We're not going to let some arrogant rich guy scare us." "But you could lose everything." "Mrs. Rebecca," interrupted Mr. Walter, "we had almost nothing before you arrived. If we're going to fight, it's better to fight for something worthwhile." The others agreed. The decision was made. They would resist. Rebecca felt an emotion she hadn't experienced in years. It was the feeling of truly belonging to a group, of having people willing to fight by her side. "Then let's prepare. Brandon won't make things easy." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. During the following week, Rebecca worked tirelessly to strengthen the operation. She knew Brandon would try to attack the most vulnerable points: documentation, permits, and relationships with buyers. First, she contacted a law firm specializing in rural law in Phoenix. The lawyer, Dr. Paul Henry, became interested in the case after Rebecca explained the situation. "Cases of corporate harassment are our specialty," he said, "and defending small producers against big corporations is a cause I personally embrace." Dr. Paul Henry visited the community and was impressed with the organization of the operation. He helped create a legal cooperative, giving legal protection to the whole group. Now you have corporate status. That makes any intimidation attempts more difficult. Next, Rebecca focused on expanding the customer base. She knew that relying on few buyers made the operation vulnerable. Through the nutritionist Jennifer, she got in touch with a network of natural product stores in Phoenix. The network's owner, Mr. Gerald, was a 60-year-old gentleman who had started by selling medicinal herbs at the market. He immediately identified with the producer's story. "I've been through that, miss. Big corporations trying to put small businesses out. I'll help you." Mr. Gerald not only signed a supply contract but also offered contacts in other cities in Arizona. The distribution network began to expand rapidly. It was then that Rebecca had an ambitious idea. What if they created their own brand? Instead of selling as generic products, let's create an identity, something that tells our story. She designed a simple concept: pure land, from the land to your table. The slogan highlighted the authentic origin and natural quality of the products. Daniel, who had revealed a talent for design, created a logo using elements of the local flora. The result was rustic but professional. The brand was registered through Dr. Paul Henry, creating another legal protection against possible sabotage attempts. The first products with the Pure Land brand reached the market 3 days before the deadline given by Brandon. The consumer's reaction was exceptional. The cooperative story, told on the labels, touched people. Many customers specifically sought out the products to support the cause. When Brandon returned the following Thursday, he found a much more solid operation than he expected. "I see you chose the hard path," he said, observing the new labels and packaging. "I chose the right path," replied Rebecca. "You have no idea who you're messing with, Rebecca. I destroy companies bigger than this child's play." "You can try. But now we are a legally established cooperative, with signed contracts and a registered trademark." Brandon didn't expect to find such organization. His plan was to intimidate a group of disorganized farmers. The reality was quite different. "This isn't over," he said before leaving, clearly frustrated. In the following days, the war truly began. First, there were problems with suppliers. Companies that sold packaging and labels to the cooperative began canceling contracts, citing capacity issues. Rebecca discovered that Brandon had offered much more advantageous contracts to these companies, provided they stopped supplying Pure Land. "Two can play that game," she told Dr. Paul Henry. They looked for suppliers in other states. Companies from Oregon and Colorado became interested in the order volume. The distance increased costs but ensured independence. Next came the inspections. Inspectors from various agencies appeared in the community almost daily. Health surveillance, environment, labor, federal revenue, they all seemed to have found urgent reasons to visit that small cooperative. Rebecca knew this was no coincidence. Brandon was using his influence to pressure public agencies. "It's clear persecution," said Dr. Paul Henry. "We'll file a complaint with the public prosecutor's office." While the legal issues unfolded, Rebecca faced another problem. Some residents began to feel insecure with so much pressure. Mr. Raymond, the old middleman, started circulating through the region again, spreading doubts. "I told you this would cause problems," he said to anyone who would listen. "That city woman brought misfortune here." 2 families left the cooperative, preferring to go back to selling to him. The defection hurt Rebecca, but she understood people's fear. "I can't force anyone to take risks for my sake," she said to Dorothy. "Stop that nonsense. Those who left didn't have the courage anyway. The ones who stayed are what matter." Dorothy's simple wisdom always calmed Rebecca in difficult times. 1 month after Brandon's ultimatum, the cooperative faced its biggest challenge yet. A large order of products was rejected by its main client, the restaurant Natural Flavors. Chef Marcus called, embarrassed, to explain. "Rebecca, I'm sorry. I received pressure from my investors. They threatened to withdraw funding if I kept buying from you." "Pressure from whom?" "A very influential businessman. I can't name names, but you can probably guess who it is." Losing the contract represented 40% of the cooperative's monthly revenue. It was a devastating blow. Rebecca called an emergency meeting. She needed to be honest about the financial situation. "We've lost our biggest client. We have money for 2 more months of operation." The silence was heavy. Some people began to question if it wouldn't be better to accept Brandon's proposal. "If you go back to him, maybe he'll stop harassing us," asked Mrs. Helen. Rebecca felt the weight of guilt. This whole situation had started because of her personal fight with Brandon. "I don't know, but you shouldn't pay for my mistake." "What mistake?" asked Daniel. "You gave us the chance to earn honest money for the first time in our lives." "Daniel is right," agreed Mr. Harold. "We were being exploited for years and didn't know it. At least now we know our worth." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an unfamiliar car. An elegant woman in her 50s stepped out of a black sedan. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Rebecca Carter." "That's me." "My name is Elizabeth Thompson. I own a chain of vegetarian restaurants in Phoenix and San Diego." Rebecca greeted the visitor, curious about the reason for her visit. "I heard about your cooperative through a nutritionist, Jennifer. She told me about the exceptional quality of your products and also about the problems you're facing." "Problems?" "Corporate harassment. I know this practice well. I went through a similar situation when I started my business." Elizabeth explained that she had started with a small vegetarian restaurant 20 years ago. Big chains tried to push her out of the market using tactics similar to the ones Brandon was employing. "I managed to resist because I found partnerships with people who believed in my vision. Today I want to do the same for you." Elizabeth's proposal was ambitious. She wanted an exclusive supply contract for all her restaurants with above-market rates and upfront payment. "This would give us financial security for at least 2 years," Rebecca quickly calculated, "and national exposure. My restaurants get tourists from all over the country. You'll get visibility that no money can buy." The proposal seemed too good to be true. Rebecca suspected a trick. "May I ask why you're doing this?" Elizabeth smiled. "First, because the product quality justifies the investment. Second, because I admire courage. And third," she hesitated, "because I know who is harassing you." "What do you mean?" "Brandon Mitchell tried to buy my restaurant chain last year. When I refused, he used the same tactics against me. Fortunately, I was already strong enough to resist." The revelation changed everything. Elizabeth wasn't just a business partner, she was an ally in the war against Brandon. "He doesn't give up easily," warned Elizabeth. "He'll try other methods." "What kind of methods?" "Blackmail, intimidation, press manipulation. Brandon is an expert in dirty warfare." The contract was signed the following week. With financial stability guaranteed, Rebecca could focus on strengthening other areas of the operation. She invested heavily in quality and innovation. She hired an agronomist to optimize production and implemented sustainable farming techniques. The results were impressive. Productivity increased without compromising the organic quality of the products. The cooperative began to have a waiting list of interested customers. It was then that Rebecca decided to explore the potential of mineral water. She invested her remaining savings in a complete analysis of the spring water quality. The report confirmed what the geologist had said. It was exceptional water with a unique mineral composition. The licensing process for commercial exploitation would be long and expensive, but Rebecca saw an opportunity to diversify the cooperative's business. "Mineral water is a billion-dollar market," she explained to the group. "If we can get a small slice, we'll all have financial security for life." The mineral water project would require an initial investment of almost 200,000 Ries. It was a lot of money for the cooperative, but Elizabeth offered to be an investor partner. "I know the beverage market. This water has the potential to be a national premium brand." The feasibility studies showed that the project could generate jobs for the entire community and transform the region into a sustainability reference. It was at this moment of optimism that Brandon attacked in an even crueler way. He didn't try to sabotage the cooperative directly this time. Instead, he spread rumors about Rebecca in the local press. Articles began to appear on gossip blogs and sites suggesting that Rebecca had abandoned the marriage, taking money from her husband's company. The accusations were vague, but enough to create doubts about her integrity. "It's a blatant lie," said Dr. Paul Henry. But it will be hard to prove slander. The attack on her reputation was devastating. 2 clients cancelled contracts after reading the articles. A bank denied financing for the mineral water project. Rebecca felt the weight of public humiliation. Seeing her name associated with theft and betrayal was too painful. "Maybe it really is better if I leave," she said to Dorothy on a particularly difficult night, "and let him win? Not a chance. But I'm hurting you all. My presence here is bringing trouble to innocent people." "Rebecca Carter," said Dorothy firmly, "you arrived here broken and brought prosperity to us. Now you're being broken again, but it won't stay that way." Dorothy's words touched Rebecca deeply. She realized she had found something in the community she never had before, a real sense of family. The next day she made a courageous decision. "Let's sue Brandon for slander and defamation," she told Dr. Paul Henry. "It's risky. He has the resources to drag out the lawsuit for years. Then let's give the media something more interesting to report than his lies." Rebecca organized a press conference at the cooperative itself. She invited journalists from Phoenix to see the operation firsthand. The result exceeded her expectations. The reporters were impressed with the cooperative's organization and the quality of the products. Several positive articles were published showing the true side of the story. An investigative journalist became particularly interested in the methods Brandon was using to harass his ex-wife. "This is a clear case of economic abuse," said the reporter. "I'm going to investigate more deeply." The investigative article was published a month later, revealing details of Brandon's unethical methods. Anonymous sources confirmed he had used his influence to harm other businesses in the past. The impact was immense. Brandon found himself on the defensive for the first time. Major clients began questioning whether they wanted to remain associated with someone with such questionable practices. Rebecca followed the fallout from a distance, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Seeing Brandon publicly exposed didn't bring the joy she had expected. "The truth always comes out," said Mr. Harold. "It's just a matter of time." With the media pressure, Brandon temporarily retreated. The constant inspections stopped, and the cooperative had peace to grow. The mineral water project was approved after 6 months of processing. The first commercial production would launch the following year, with revenue estimates that would revolutionize the local economy. Rebecca was invited to lecture at universities about sustainable development and rural entrepreneurship. Her story inspired other similar projects across Brazil. Her personal transformation was evident to everyone. The fragile woman who had arrived desperate in the desert had become a confident and respected leader. "Sometimes I think Brandon did me a favor by abandoning me here," she said to Dorothy one Sunday afternoon. "How so?" "If he hadn't done that, I would never have discovered what I'm capable of." Dorothy smiled. "We were always capable, Rebecca. We just needed an opportunity to show it." 2 years after her arrival in the community, Rebecca received an unexpected visit. Nathan Mitchell, the stepson she had raised since childhood, showed up at the cooperative. The 22-year-old young man was visibly nervous. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you." "Nathan, how did you find me?" "It wasn't hard. Your story is in all the business magazines in the country." It was true. The Pure Land Cooperative had become a national success story, studied in universities and cited in books about sustainable development. "I came to apologize for my father, and to tell you something important." Nathan revealed that Brandon was facing serious financial problems. Several major clients had cancelled contracts after the media exposure. The company was losing money rapidly. "He's desperate, Rebecca. He tried to convince me to sue you for parental alienation." "And are you going to do that?" "Of course not. You were more of a mother to me than he was a father. I came here to warn you that he's planning something." "What kind of something?" "I don't know exactly, but he keeps talking about settling this once and for all. I'm worried." The information worried Rebecca. She knew Brandon well enough to know that desperate men were capable of anything. "Nathan, are you sure he doesn't know you're here?" "I'm sure. I told him I was visiting some friends in San Diego." "You'd better stay a few days. It's not safe to go back now." Nathan ended up staying a week in the community. He was impressed with what Rebecca had built. "This is incredible. You built a business from nothing." "Not from nothing. It was with the help of generous people who believed in me. During his stay, Nathan revealed more details about Brandon's situation. He lost the contract with the German multinational. It accounted for 40% of the company's revenue. Why? The Germans got worried about his image after the press articles. They said they didn't want to be associated with unethical practices. Brandon's downfall was happening faster than Rebecca had imagined. Part of her felt pity for the man she once loved. Another part remembered all the suffering he had caused. Do you know if he has any other plans against me? I only know he hired a private detective to investigate your life here. He wants to find something he can use against you. Rebecca sighed. Even in decline, Brandon didn't give up trying to harm her. Nathan, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why are you helping me? Brandon is your biological father. Nathan was silent for a few minutes, watching the community children play in the yard. Because you taught me the difference between right and wrong. My father only taught me to win at any cost. The answer moved Rebecca deeply. She had raised Nathan as her own son, always trying to pass on values that Brandon despised. I'm thinking about working here with you, said Nathan. I studied business administration. I can help expand the operations. And your future at your father's company? What future? His company is sinking, and even if it weren't, I don't want to be part of that. Nathan's decision to stay marked a new phase in the cooperative's history. With updated knowledge in management and digital marketing, he helped further professionalize the operation. Pure Land launched its own website, created social media profiles, and implemented online sales. The national reach expanded rapidly. It was then that Brandon made his last desperate move. He showed up at the community on a Tuesday morning, but this time he wasn't alone. He brought a lawyer and an accountant with him. Rebecca, I've come to make a final proposal, he said, visibly worn down. Rebecca received him in the cooperative's headquarters meeting room, accompanied by Dr. Paul Henry and some board members. I want to buy the cooperative, Brandon said bluntly. The cooperative is not for sale. I'm offering 5 million reais. It's much more than it's worth. The proposal surprised everyone. 5 million was an impressive amount for an operation that had started from scratch. Why would you do that? Asked Rebecca. Because I need a prosperous business to save my company, and because, he hesitated, because I recognize that you've built something valuable here. Rebecca studied her ex-husband's face. Brandon seemed to have aged 10 years in two. His hair was graying, he had deep, dark circles, and he had lost weight. Brandon, you tried to destroy everything we built here. Why would I trust you now? Because I have no choice. My company will go bankrupt if I don't find a stable source of income. The conversation was interrupted by Nathan's arrival, who was clearly surprised to see his father there. Nathan, what are you doing here? Asked Brandon suspiciously. I work here now, Dad. What do you mean you work here? I'm the cooperative's digital marketing manager. Brandon turned red with anger. You betrayed me. You're on her side against me. I'm on the side of what's right, Dad. You always told me to choose the winning side. Rebecca is winning. The confrontation between father and son was painful to witness. Rebecca saw how lost Brandon was, unable to understand how he had reached that point. Brandon, she said calmly, I'm going to make a counter-proposal. What kind of counter-proposal? You can work here as a consultant. Your business experience would be useful for our expansion plans. Brandon laughed bitterly. You want me to work for you? I want to give you a chance to start over. The right way this time. The proposal took everyone by surprise, including the cooperative members. Some people whispered protests. Before you answer, Rebecca said to the group, let me explain my reasoning. She explained that Brandon possessed valuable knowledge about managing large companies. With proper supervision, he could help the cooperative avoid common mistakes of rapid growth. But there are conditions, Rebecca continued. First, Brandon would have to sign an agreement acknowledging all past unethical practices. Second, he would be on a 6-month probationary period. Third, any inappropriate behavior would result in immediate dismissal. Brandon remained silent, processing the proposal. It was humiliating to work as his ex-wife's subordinate, but it was better than bankruptcy. I need time to think, he finally said. You have until Friday. After Brandon left, the community gathered to discuss Rebecca's controversial proposal. Mrs. Rebecca, with all due respect, this man tried to destroy our lives, said Daniel. I know, but holding a grudge won't get us anywhere. What if he tries to sabotage us from the inside? Asked Mr. Harold. That's why there's a probation period. At the first sign of trouble, he's gone. Dorothy, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Rebecca, are you sure you're not doing this out of pity? The question went straight to the point. Rebecca needed to honestly reflect on her motivations. Maybe so, Dorothy, but I also believe people can change, and if Brandon has truly changed, it would be wrong to deny him a chance at redemption. The discussion continued for hours. In the end, the group decided to trust Rebecca's judgment, but with reservations. If it goes wrong, you'll have to fire him, said Mr. Walter. I promise. On Friday, Brandon returned with his answer. I accept the conditions, he said, visibly embarrassed. Are you sure? It won't be easy working here after everything that happened. I'm sure, and Rebecca, thank you for the chance. They were the first genuinely humble words Rebecca had heard from Brandon in years. Brandon's first month of work was tense for everyone. The residents treated him with polite coldness, and he seemed uncomfortable with the cooperative's simple environment. But gradually, something began to change. Brandon suggested improvements to the logistical system that reduced costs by 20%. He used his old contacts to open markets in other states. His negotiation experience secured more advantageous contracts. He's trying, admitted Daniel, still reluctant. But I don't trust him, added Mr. Harold. Rebecca watched Brandon carefully, looking for signs of his old manipulations. For now, he seemed genuinely committed to redeeming himself. The real test came when the cooperative faced a supply crisis. An unexpected drought damaged the harvest, and they wouldn't be able to fulfill all their contracts. We'll have to cancel some orders, said Rebecca at the weekly meeting. Not necessarily, interrupted Brandon. I know producers in other regions who can help us temporarily. But that goes against our principles. Our brand is about local products. We can create a special line, explaining the situation to the customers. Total transparency. The suggestion made sense. Instead of cancelling contracts, they created a land solidarity category with products from partner cooperatives, explaining the climate crisis. The customers not only accepted it, but praised the honesty and the mutual support network among producers. The crisis turned into an opportunity to strengthen regional partnerships. That was a good idea, Rebecca admitted to Brandon privately. Thank you. I'm learning that not every solution needs to be an individual one. The change in Brandon was noticeable. He began joining community meals, helped with practical tasks when needed, and treated everyone with genuine respect. 6 months later, the cooperative voted unanimously to hire Brandon as a permanent consultant. It's strange to say this, commented Dorothy, but he's become a decent person. Brandon's transformation culminated in a request that surprised everyone. Rebecca, can I speak with you privately? Of course. They walked to the edge of the reservoir that had been built to better utilize the spring waters. I want to apologize to you, he said, for everything. For the abandonment, the persecution, for all the years I wasted being a bad man. Brandon, let me finish. You showed me there's a better way to live. I don't know if I deserve it, but I'd like to try to rebuild at least a friendship between us. Rebecca looked at the man who had been her husband for 15 years. It was hard to reconcile the Brandon before her now with the cruel man who had abandoned her in the desert. Friendship needs to be built with time and trust, she said, but I'm willing to try. Thank you. And Rebecca? Yes? You were right. This is where you belong. 3 years after being abandoned on the dusty road, Rebecca Carter had become a national reference in sustainable development. The Pure Land Cooperative employed over 100 people and served clients in 10 states. The Pure Spring mineral water had become a national premium brand competing with traditional labels. Profits were reinvested in the community, which now had a school, a health clinic, and internet access. Rebecca had found not only financial success, but purpose and a true family. At 45, she radiated a confidence and serenity she had never possessed during her life of empty luxury. Brandon continued working at the cooperative, but now as a minority partner. His original company had gone bankrupt, but he had no regrets. He had discovered satisfaction in work that truly mattered. "Sometimes I think about what it would have been like if I hadn't abandoned you that day," he said during one of the cooperative's annual meetings. "I would never have discovered who I really am," Rebecca replied. "In a strange way, you gave me the greatest gift of my life." Nathan had become the cooperative's general manager, implementing technologies that revolutionized local agriculture. He had married an agronomist from the region, and they planned to raise their children in the community. Dorothy, at 70, was considered the cooperative's matriarch. Her home had become a welcoming center for other women arriving in difficult situations. "You never know where a blessing comes from," she would always say. Mrs. Rebecca arrived here seeming lost, but it was we who were lost. At the cooperative's 5-year anniversary party, Rebecca gave a speech that moved everyone present. "When they left me on this road, I thought my life was over. In truth, it was just beginning. You taught me that wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you build together with other people." The audience included representatives from universities, politicians, business people, and hundreds of rural producers who had replicated the model in other regions. "The greatest empire we can build," Rebecca continued, "is one of true human relationships and purposeful work. That is the legacy I want to leave." The success of the Pure Land Cooperative inspired public policies for rural development. Rebecca was invited to advise the government on sustainable family farming programs. She never returned to live in the capital. Her simple home in the community, overlooking the springs she had discovered, was all she needed. Brandon built a small house on the neighboring property. They never resumed their marriage, but developed a respectful partnership that benefited everyone. "Have you really forgiven me?" he asked one Sunday afternoon. "I have. But more importantly, have you forgiven yourself?" "I'm learning." The honest answer showed how much Brandon had changed. The arrogant man he once was could not have acknowledged his failings with such simplicity. Rebecca's story spread beyond the borders of Brazil. International organizations invited her to share her experience at conferences on women's empowerment and sustainable development. "My story isn't special," she would always say. "It's just proof that when it seems we've lost everything, sometimes it's because we're about to find everything." In her 10th year in the community, Rebecca received a proposal to write a book about her journey. She accepted on the condition that all profits would go to a fund supporting women in vulnerable situations. "How many Rebeccas are out there thinking they have no worth?" she would say. "If my story can inspire one person to discover their strength, it will have been worth it." The book, From Desert to Oasis, How I Found My True Worth, became a national bestseller. Rebecca donated over 2 million raised to social causes. Brandon also wrote his version of the story, an honest account of how power and arrogance almost destroyed his life. The Price of Pride became required reading in business ethics courses. "Writing this book was harder than admitting my mistakes," he confessed, "but I need other people to learn from my errors." The cooperative continued growing, always maintaining its original values. They refused to accept buyout offers from large corporations, preferring to expand through partnerships with other cooperatives. "We don't want to become what we fought against," Rebecca would say in the assemblies. "Our success cannot come at the cost of our principles." At 50, Rebecca was recognized as one of the most influential leaders in sustainable Brazilian agribusiness. But she still woke up early to tend the community garden and participated in the cooperative's daily tasks. Leadership isn't about being above others, she taught the young people in the community. It's about being alongside them, showing the way. The transformation of the region was visible even from space. Satellite images showed the desert being gradually replaced by green areas, thanks to the sustainable irrigation techniques developed by the cooperative. The model was replicated in dozens of other arid regions of the country. The Pure Land method became an international reference for the recovery of degraded lands. Sometimes I look at all this and can't believe it started with a woman abandoned on the road, commented Dorothy, now 80 years old, but still active in the cooperative. Rebecca always laughed when she heard that. "Dorothy, this didn't start with me being abandoned. It started with you all taking me in. The seed was already here. It just needed someone to water it." On the cooperative's 15th anniversary, Rebecca announced her decision to step back from daily management, taking on only advisory roles. "The time has come to let the new generations lead," she said. "My role now is to ensure our values are preserved." Nathan assumed the presidency of the cooperative, implementing precision agriculture technologies that further increased sustainable productivity. Rebecca dedicated herself fully to the educational institute she had created, offering free rural entrepreneurship courses for women in vulnerable situations. "Every woman who comes through here carries the potential to transform an entire community," she told her students. "You just need to believe in yourselves." Brandon became the cooperative's Director of Sustainability, a position created especially for him. His business experience was valuable, but always subordinate to the organization's ethical principles. "It's funny," he commented in an interview for a business magazine. "I had a fake empire that crumbled. Rebecca built a real empire that will last for generations." The magazine had done a special feature on their story, titled "From Abandonment to Forgiveness, the Most Improbable Story in Brazilian Agribusiness." "You two are proof that people can change," commented the journalist. "I changed because I wanted to," replied Brandon. "Rebecca changed because she was forced to by circumstances. But in the end, we both grew." Rebecca agreed. "Sometimes life breaks us to rebuild us better. The important thing is not to waste the opportunity." At 60, Rebecca was the adoptive grandmother to all the children in the community. Her house always had homemade sweets and stories to tell. "Aunt Rebecca, tell us again how you got here," would always ask Danny Jr., Daniel's son. "Once upon a time, there was a woman who thought she needed a lot to be happy," she would begin, until she discovered she needed very little but very special people. The story always ended with the same moral. The real treasure isn't in what we have, but in what we do with what we receive. Dorothy had passed away at 85, surrounded by the entire community. At her funeral, Rebecca gave an emotional speech about the woman who had changed her life. "Dorothy taught me that family isn't who shares the same blood, but who shares the same heart. She will always be our spiritual matriarch." Dorothy's house was turned into a memorial, receiving visitors interested in learning the history of the cooperative. Rebecca continued living in the same simple house she had built in the early years. Even with the means to have much more, she preferred the simplicity she had learned to value. "Why complicate when you can simplify?" she would always say. Brandon, at 65, had become a completely different man. He tended a small vegetable garden and actively participated in community activities. "If someone had told me 20 years ago that I'd be happy planting tomatoes, I'd have laughed in their face," he joked. But the happiness was genuine. For the first time in his life, Brandon had real friends and work with purpose. "Arrogance isolated me for decades," he reflected. "Here I learned that human connection is more valuable than any bank account." The cooperative had become a business model, studied in universities worldwide. International delegations regularly visited the community to learn about sustainable development. "We never imagined our little cooperative would become a global reference," said Daniel, now production manager. "It's because you never lost your humility," Rebecca would reply. "Success that goes to your head doesn't last." The educational institute created by Rebecca had already trained over 1,000 women in rural entrepreneurship. Many of them replicated the model in their regions, creating a national network of cooperatives. "Rebecca planted seeds that became a forest," commented one of the graduated students. The analogy was perfect. Like the springs she discovered in the first year, Rebecca's influence spread in ever-widening circles. Nathan had expanded the business into exports, always maintaining the principles of fair trade and sustainability. The Pure Land brand was internationally recognized. Grandma Rebecca, as the children called her, always said that growth without values isn't progress, he would tell international investors. "Our success is measured by the positive impact we make." The cooperative's philosophy influenced a new generation of American entrepreneurs who prioritized purpose beyond profit. Rebecca's legacy goes beyond the numbers, commented a Harvard professor studying the case. She proved it's possible to do business with social conscience. At 70, Rebecca remained active, but had reduced her travels to dedicate herself to the family she had built. She loved her afternoons on the porch, watching the children play in the gardens that were once dry land. "Aunt Rebecca, do you regret anything?" asked Clara, Mr. Harold's granddaughter. Rebecca thought for a moment. "I regret wasting so many years not knowing who I really was, but every mistake brought me here, so maybe it was worth it." The wise answer reflected the serenity Rebecca had achieved over the years. Brandon, now with completely white hair, had become the community's official storyteller. He used his own journey to teach children about repentance and redemption. "Was Uncle Brandon a bad man?" asked a boy. "He was a lost man," he replied. "But I discovered it's never too late to find the right path." The children loved his stories because he never presented himself as a hero, always as someone who had learned from mistakes. "Humility is the first step toward wisdom," he taught. Rebecca watched these scenes with satisfaction. Seeing Brandon teach values he once scorned was proof that genuine transformation was possible. On the cooperative's 20th anniversary, the Dorothy Carter Cultural Center was inaugurated, honoring the matriarch who had welcomed Rebecca on that first day. "Dorothy planted the seed of kindness," said Rebecca at the ceremony. "Now that seed has become a tree bearing fruit for the whole world." The center offered courses, workshops, and space for community events. It was fully funded by the cooperative's profits. "Education is the best investment we can make," Rebecca always said. The center's library had a special section with the history of the cooperative, including photos from the earliest days to the current success. Visitors were impressed to see the transformation. The disheveled, lost woman in the first photos contrasted with the confident leader in the current records. "Is it the same person?" they often asked. "It is, and it isn't," Rebecca replied. "The body is the same, but the soul has been reborn." The cooperative had created an emergency fund that helped other communities affected by droughts or natural disasters. The Land Solidarity Fund had already assisted hundreds of families. "We received help when we needed it," Rebecca explained. "Now it's our duty to give back." The philosophy of reciprocity was one of the cooperative's fundamental pillars. Nathan had married Sarah Ann, the agronomist engineer, and they had 3 children who grew up free in the cooperative's fields. "My children know every spring, every tree, every family here," he said. "They have roots I never had." The children treated Rebecca as a grandmother and Brandon as a grandfather. The dysfunctional family of the past had transformed into a chosen, harmonious family. "You are my greatest wealth," Rebecca told her adoptive grandchildren. At 80 years old, Rebecca decided to write her complete memoirs. The book, Roots in the Desert, Memories of a Rebuilt Life, would become her final major project. "I want to record every detail of this journey," she explained, "so that other people know there is always hope." The book included testimonies from all the people who were part of her story, from Dorothy, through old interviews, to the cooperative's most recent collaborators. "It's impressive how a single decision can change the course of so many lives," commented Dr. Paul Henry, who had become a close friend of the family over the years. He was referring to Brandon's decision to abandon Rebecca, which paradoxically resulted in the positive transformation of hundreds of people. "Sometimes good is born from evil," Rebecca reflected. "I don't justify what Brandon did, but I acknowledge it brought me to the place I was meant to be." The memoir became a worldwide bestseller, translated into more than 20 languages. The profits were entirely donated to rural development projects in African countries. "If my story can help someone on the other side of the world, then all the pain was worth it," Rebecca said. Brandon had developed Alzheimer's at 82. Rebecca became his primary caregiver, a final demonstration of forgiveness and compassion. "Why are you doing this?" he asked in moments of lucidity. "After all I did." "Because that's what families do," she would simply reply. Even with his illness, Brandon had moments of clarity where he expressed gratitude for the second chance Rebecca had given him. "I loved you the wrong way," he said one afternoon. "You taught me how to love truly." These were some of the last lucid words he spoke. Brandon passed away at 85, surrounded by Rebecca, Nathan, and the entire community that had learned to respect him. He died at peace with himself, Rebecca said at the funeral. That's more than many achieve. Brandon's grave was placed in the small community cemetery next to Dorothy's. The headstone bore a simple inscription, Brandon Mitchell, learned to be better. Rebecca remained active until she was 85, when she finally decided to retire from all official duties. It's time to just enjoy every sunset, she said at one of the last meetings she presided over. She spent her final years reading, tending to plants and telling stories to the community's children. Aunt Rebecca, what was the happiest day of your life? A little girl asked. Today, she replied, as always. The happiest day is always today. Rebecca Carter passed away at 90, sleeping peacefully in her simple home. Her funeral brought together thousands of people, from local residents to international dignitaries. She transformed abandonment into welcome, desert into oasis, hatred into love, Nathan said in the final speech. Rebecca taught us that it's never too late to start over and never too early to make a difference. Rebecca's legacy continued through the foundation that bore her name, maintained with resources from the cooperative and dedicated to empowering women in vulnerable situations. The cooperative annually celebrated Rebecca Carter Day, when the story was retold to new generations. Never forget, the celebration's official narrator would always say, that our prosperity was born from generosity. Rebecca arrived with empty hands and left hearts full. 50 years after Rebecca had been abandoned on the dusty road, the region had become a global model for sustainable development. International universities had permanent campuses there, studying the Pure Land phenomenon. The house where Rebecca lived was turned into a museum, but kept exactly as she left it. Simple, welcoming, full of love. This house has hosted presidents, business leaders, celebrities, the tour guide would explain. But Mrs. Rebecca always said her true wealth was the simple people who surrounded her. The road where it all began was renamed Hope Road, with a historical marker explaining the origin of the cooperative. It was here that a woman lost everything and found herself, the plaque read. Tourists from all over the world visited the site, many seeking inspiration for their own journeys of starting over. The Pure Spring mineral water had become one of the most valuable brands in the United States, but it continued to be produced artisanally, following Rebecca's original principles. To grow without losing your soul is the greatest challenge for any business, the current managers would always repeat. The cooperative directly employed more than 5,000 people and indirectly benefited a population of 50,000 in the region. Mrs. Rebecca's dream was that no one would ever have to leave here for lack of opportunities, recounted Mr. Walter Jr., son of the former goat herder. That dream came true. The story of Rebecca Carter continued to inspire people around the world, proving that resilience, kindness, and purposeful work could transform lives, communities, and even entire countries. She taught us that a true empire is not measured in square feet or bank account figures, a biographer wrote years later. It is measured in how many lives you can positively touch. And Rebecca had touched thousands of lives, creating waves of transformation that would continue to reverberate for generations. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of overcoming and starting over. Did Rebecca make the right decisions? And Brandon, did he really deserve a second chance? Leave your honest opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like if the story moved you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one. Thank you so much for your company.